we have a lot of important things that we can cover that are going to help us. They're going to help us really make ourselves valuable in the eyes of the districts that we're working in. And as Michael mentioned earlier, the reason that we have you guys grouped in this specific way is we're really interested in the common knowledge that you guys have. We're going to be looking specifically at one course in each group, a different course in each group, and it's going to be something that I'm hoping you guys have a common knowledge about. For example, I realize that Clark and Vern may not necessarily have the same curriculum that they're teaching on a daily basis. However, one of the things that Vern and Mike does is they're working on EMR. And that's something that's directly related to the knowledge base that Clark and Jessica have. And so that's why I've started pairing you guys in this way, is because we're going to be looking at specific course outlines and figuring out how do we workshop this. I know one of the thoughts that we had last time is it was really rushed. And I know it was really rushed. We had a lot of information to get through. I really want to slow down this time and do a lot of workshopping. This is really going to be guided practice, as I'm going to use that terminology that we've used with lesson planning. Today, this is the guided practice piece where collectively we're going to show you guys how do we update these course outlines. That way they're going to be eligible for UC A to G. For it to be eligible for UC A to G, it needs to be a 180-hour course. And that's what's going to add value to where our counselors are going to be placing students in there. And hopefully they'll be eligible to be embedded into the school day. So I want to take you guys through the process today with the understanding that we're going to then transfer this knowledge. The other thing we talked about in our direct instruction workshop is we have guided practice with the intent of transferring knowledge. So with the knowledge that we're learning today, that we're going to struggle through and muddle through this and workshop this and get our heads wrapped around it, we're then going to be able to take that knowledge and then transfer it to our own individual course outlines. And I'm going to provide you time during the summer. I'm knowing some of you guys have looked through the handouts. There's going to be time this summer for you guys to come down to the Rancho office and get paid to individually update and create that course outline. And so this is something that we truly do value. All of our lesson planning that we did last professional development, our sequencing that we've done, focusing on Common Core, all of that is culminating and building to this specific event. And so we're really trying to make sure that we have options for next year. That way we can make ourselves part of that culture. I'm going to ask Christine now to pass out the course outlines. These course outlines are going to be specific to each individual table. So not everybody needs all of the course outlines. What they do need is just the ones that, there's going to be like 2 or 3 at each table that you guys can kind of look through and share. Those are the outlines that we're going to be updating today. We're going to be collaborating on this. What this is the CBEDS course code for the state of California. And so CBEDS are the California Basic Educational Data System. That's what CBEDS means. And so this basically has all of the CTE classes that the state of California is aware of and has course outlines. A lot of the stuff that we've been doing up until now has been based on history. For maybe the last 70 years, we've taught this class and titled it as such, but there's been an evolution within education. And so what I would like us to do is look at your existing course outline. Once we look at our existing course outline, identify where it is in the CBEDS, and then read that description. Is that description still relevant? Is that description no longer relevant? And you may find out that some of the courses may be canceled. You may find out that there's no longer a CBEDS code for that. And so the reason for this other long shoot that I'm going to go real quick, this right here is a list of the outdated CBEDS codes. So as you're looking through your outline, you may find out, hey, I can't find my class in CBEDS, and that's because it no longer exists, and they've renamed it. So this is a crosswalk where you can find out at the top, plant and soil science no longer exists. That was code 4010. The new code is now 4011, which is just plant science. So they've changed the name of it. They retired the old code, and they have a new code. So if you cannot find your code, reference this sheet, and this sheet's going to help you figure out, okay, that course is now changed, and this is the new code. So that's what these 2 documents are. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of table time to look at your collective outline that you guys are going to be working on and figure out what should the CBEDS course number be, and secondly, once you know what it should be, let's read through that description and find out, is that description still relevant, or what sort of changes are we going to need to make? Are there questions before I turn you guys loose? We're going to have 5 minutes to look through the CBEDS codes to figure out, look at the old outline, and determine what should my CBEDS course be for this outline that you guys have been given. Questions on that? All right, we've got 5 minutes. Now that we've looked through that outline, we've kind of read through it, what we're going to be doing collectively, the next step, also passed out of your tables, I believe, is the CTE standards. These are your individual CTE standards for your industry. We're going to look through and identify the specific CTE standards. Also, as we're looking at that sheet, I want to draw your attention to 2 handouts that are in everybody's folder. The 2 handouts that we have in everybody's folder this is going to be a graphic organizer. So this is going to be the template that we're going to be scribbling on today, and at the end I'm going to need a copy of this from each table. So I would suggest doing more than one of these, that way everybody can walk away with an exemplar, and we can give you photocopies afterwards of what you've handwritten on here. But at the end of the day today, each table is going to be responsible for their CBEDS code that they identified, and they're going to be implementing it and integrating it into our new course outline format. And so this is the blank template. But like a good educator, I know that we need a framework. We need to know what is it going to look like when we're done. So this right here is an exemplar. This is one that we've already actually gone through the practice within the Educational Services Department and figured out how we would go about doing this. So this is specifically a rough draft for our law enforcement occupations course. So nobody here today is doing law enforcement occupations. We are going to be doing criminal justice, which is one of the prerequisites for this course. So what I'm going to have you guys do is, once again, we have a blank template and we have an example. What we're going to be doing is, now that we've identified a CBEDS code, we're going to look through the CTE standards. And we're going to start ranking those standards. So we're going to write out standard number 1. On this example is standard A1, demonstrate an awareness of the personal, physical, and psychological qualities found in successful public safety job candidates, and recall critical types of decisions and outcomes which determine employability and public safety options. What we did is we determined, is that something that is necessary for this course outline? And we're going to write down each standard, and we're going to rank each standard. And we're going to say, yes, this is mandatory, this has to be taught. Or we're going to say, if we have enough time, we need to teach this. We should teach this. And number 3, at the end of the year, this might be a nice sort of fluffy project or something like that if we have time. And number 4 is, it's great for the pathway, but it's not relevant to this specific class, this specific part of the sequence. So I would like you guys to go through the CTE standards, write all of them out, and start ranking just to figure out what is going to be relevant for what we're doing. Do I have any questions on what the expectation is? All right, as you guys are struggling, raise your hand, and Ed Services will gladly come around and see how we can help you out. We have 25 minutes to go through this. We have 25 minutes for us to collectively collaborate and go through ranking each standard and assigning each standard for the course outline. Check. Sort of as a recap, what we've done so far is we've really wanted the career techs, the classified folks, in as part of this process, so they kind of know what is going on, because once again, our career techs are our liaisons down out there at the school sites. And so it's important that everybody knows that we're in the process of creating these 180-hour curriculums. We're in the process of getting things UC A to G aligned. That way we can have those conversations out there. At this time, I'm going to dismiss the career techs. We're going to continue moving on this a lot more in depth. At this time right now, if the career techs would meet with Dora and the classified folks would meet with Carla, and we will be joining everybody shortly. So let's also just take like a 5-minute potty break and everything else, and we'll start back here at 9:35. All right, one of the things that we've been talking about as we've been going through the process is, if you recall on the last staff development, we looked at the idea of what direct instruction is. Direct instruction is really the transfer of knowledge. What we're doing here today, once again, is guided practice. But once we have this knowledge, you guys are going to have to apply it with your own courses, if we didn't do one of your courses today. Or if you have 4 courses, you're going to have to do that. So I want to focus on that transfer of knowledge. So I would like somebody to recap the very first thing that we did, so you can have that in your mind of, well, as I'm going to be doing this one day, as I'm going to be doing this summer possibly, let me think about what was the very first step. So let me randomly call on Jackie. Jackie, if you will help us understand what was the very first step that we needed to do as we are going through this process. What was the very first thing? If you're going to look at one of your classes, what's the first step? Seabeds? Okay, and what do we do with seabeds? Let's stretch that. So we're going to look down and we're going to identify a section in seabeds. And when we identify that section, talk me through a little bit more of that.
So first you need to make sure you create your lesson based on that standard.
Your course outline is going to be based upon that description in seabeds. So the very first step is going to be identifying the seabeds. Good job, Jackie. Thank you. Let's give Jackie a hand. We're going to identify the seabeds course description. And then what's the next thing we're going to do from there? Let me call on Steve. Steve, what's the very next thing we do once we know, okay, we have these seabeds, we've read the description, we know we're going to align our course outline to it. What's our second step?
Pathway standards.
We're going to look at our pathway standards. So we're going to figure out which set of pathway standards. Now remember, that's under the umbrella of industry. So we're going to look at first our industry sector, and we're going to look at our pathway standards. And what are we going to do with all those pathway standards? We're going to say we're going to teach all of them, they're all 100% accurate. We're going to rank them. So we're going to go through and we're going to identify which standards are relevant, which standards are going to help us with this specific course description that we just read in CDs. So that's what we've done so far. Questions up to this point? Yes, sir.
Are they ever going to say if I teach plumbing, that all of these standards relate to 8 or 9 different occupations? Am I ever going to have a chance to write down the ones I think are important, just referring to lighthouse and plumbing to get them employed, rather than writing for heating and air, electrical, wallboard, plastering, painting?
So I want to make sure that I understand your question. If your question is, as I'm starting to develop my course outline for plumbing, is it appropriate to elaborate on other skills? Is that what your question is?
You said it very elaborate.
Okay, so yes, the answer is we're going to look at the standards, and if the standards say it's important for them to know some of these other skills, then yes, we're going to incorporate that.
So
If our curriculum, if our advisory,
must teach, should teach, may teach.
yes, we're going to rank them that way. Now, if for some reason you think that it's going to be important for them to learn aviation techniques in your plumbing class, I would like to know what standard that would be aligned to within there, so we really do need to base it on the standards. Or we need to base it on the advisory committees. And so when your affiliate or your advisory says, you know what, this is also new in plumbing and we want them to go in this direction, then those are going to be our sources that are going to inform what our course outline is going to be. Yes, sir.
When I'm looking at the seabeds, I would have liked to maybe combine two. Is that possible?
That's a great question.
Is
And
this
really,
intro or advanced?
right. So now what you're looking at is you're looking at a potential sequence. And so now we could have 180-hour, maybe if we're doing like a 2-hour day class, we could have the first part of it be that first course outline and the second part be the second course outline. So we could look at creating a sequence, but we want to do that as sections. So we don't, in the past what we've done is we've just had these large chunks of information, and then we kind of try to go through everything. We really need to have that intentional sequence about it. And that's really why we did that professional development 2 times ago, looking at those sequences. So we want to do a course outline for the introductory. Then if we determine, hey, our kids need to go to the next step, which is going to be then this, then we could look at scaffolding that and doing that as a sequence. Does that answer your question?
Almost.
Okay.
Is it possible to think of the sequence being in semesters as opposed to a year?
That's something that we can discuss. So if we want to sit down with your school site and say, first semester is, we'll make it a year-long class, but first semester is this and second semester is this, then that's something that we can definitely negotiate. We are now going to integrate our CTE anchor standards within your identified relevant pathway standards. So now that we know what pathway standards are critical and important, we're now going to go back to the front of this document, which looks at the anchor standards. And so once again, we're referencing the template. Oh, so you have those passed out as well? Oh, the anchor standards are also in the handout. Fantastic. You guys are always one step ahead, and I appreciate that. So what we have here are the anchor standards, and we're going to go through and look, okay, we already know what is critical for this pathway. So now we're going to go through and integrate in that second column on here. So in this second column, which says anchor standards, we're going to figure out which anchor standards we can integrate into each one of these standards. So we know that the first anchor standard is academics, the second one's communication. You may need to have communication in the first set of standards, and the second set of standards, and the third set of standards, and the fourth set of standards. So we're going to go through now and to identify specifically where we're going to integrate the appropriate anchor standards.
1, 2, or 3, not 4, based upon the ranking of 1.
We're only going to integrate the anchor standards for the ones that we have ranked as 1, 2, or 3. If there's a standard that's completely irrelevant for our specific pathway, or for our specific class, there's no reason to identify an anchor standard for that. And we are going to have until 9:50 to apply this to the template. Questions before I turn you guys loose? The next thing that we're going to start thinking about is determining key assignments that will demonstrate and measure a student's successfulness towards the mastery of that standard. And so we make sure that we know the time to add, sorry, that's supposed to be now, not now. Now is the time to add affiliate and advisory suggestions. And so as we're thinking of some of these things, this is what our affiliates are needing in the industry. This is what our advisors are saying at our advisory meetings. And now is the time to start coming up with those key assignments and thinking, we're going to start thinking more broad to start out with. And then from this, we're going to start narrowing down some very, very specific assignments. So as you're going through the template, maybe at the very top, just say, I would like to do a project-based assignment on ABC. And then I want to do maybe a debate on this topic. So think of some very broad sort of things that take into account the standards, the anchor standards, our advisories, the curriculums that we're working with. So now we're going to start identifying some key assignments, and then in the next section, we're going to really dive down deep into those assignments. So for this first thing, just the overview, let's take until 10:05, 10:10-ish. So let's take 5 minutes just to kind of go through an overview, and then we'll look at breaking that down further.
Let's finish.
Okay, as I've been walking through the tables, you guys are making a lot of great progress. One of the things that I'm hearing is that A4s, once again, we're moving fast and we're doing a lot. I know that we're moving fast, we're doing a lot. The purpose of today really is the guided practice. How can we understand how to do this, get our heads wrapped around it, and then eventually we're going to have that independent practice. And if you look in the back of your handouts, there's a little half sheet of paper that says, hey, during the week of June, this date to this date, you guys are invited to come down to the Rancho office, take the time necessary to do this individually, and then have one of my team members help you out if necessary. So once again, this is just the guided practice that we're going to transfer over to the independent practice later on. I would like to remind everybody that I am going to ask for a sheet from each table. That way we don't lose the work that's been accomplished here, because we are making a lot of important progress. And so we're at, as I mentioned earlier, the first thing that we were going to do was look at the overarching sort of assignments. And now we're going to start breaking those assignments down and tying them to specific substandards. So this next thing is we're going to determine the key assignments. Actually, that's the one we just did. We're over here now. So as we're developing assignments and assessments, we need to ask ourselves, what projects can students do to demonstrate mastery? Are we looking at essays, performance, paper and pencil, presentation? How can I determine if a student has mastered the subject matter? Are all the aspects of the standards being assessed? What do I expect to see from students that have mastered these standards? And what does rigor look like in the standard? Once again, one of the things that we've done in the past is we've looked at that learning taxonomy. And we know that as we're looking at some of the verbs within these standards, some of these verbs imply what rigor is. It's not a student will understand a body system. Maybe it's a student can diagnose which body system needs to be addressed. So there's a much different verb and depth and rigor versus understand and diagnose. So diagnose means you can understand, and diagnose means that you know a lot more than that. So as you're looking at each of these substandards that we're trying to align with, pay attention to those verbs. How can we make these assignments rigorous? And so now we're going to look and develop each of these assignments and link them specifically back to one of the pathway standards. And we may link an anchor standard in there as well. We're going to have the next, we're going to do this until 10:25. And so once again, this is the guided practice piece before we go into the independent practice, which is going to happen at a later time. Kathy.
Forrest, when we get to the
assessments and assignments,
Yes, ma'am?
for the assessment projects, can that touch on more than one?
Absolutely. An assessment may be something culminating
All right.
at the end that's going to incorporate 2 or 3 different standards possibly.
So a professional portfolio could touch on different ones?
Absolutely. So this could be like section 1 of the professional portfolio.
Okay.
This could be section 2 of the professional portfolio. Absolutely. Other questions? All right, guys, let's work until 10:25. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. What we're going to be doing for this next pod is we're going to finalize the assessment column. So we're going to take a little bit more time now. If we need to go back, fine tune some things. As I was talking with one of the tables over here, we said, hey, as we're kind of going through it, we realized that maybe we should have added a different anchor standard in here in conjunction with that. So now's the time to kind of go through. We're going to take the next 15 minutes to finalize and formalize as we're looking at our assessments now specifically. Which of these assessments are formative assessment, meaning which is going to be a culminating ending project that's going to demonstrate the student's competency on this. And then we're going to look at formative is, I just described summative. Formative is what is going to give us information about where my students are at. Those sort of checking for understanding, those sort of little assignments along the way. Oh, this is how Johnny's behaving or responding today, and he's still missing this information. So those periodic assessments or those quizzes, or those just calling on students in the middle of class to figure out what is the overall temperature of my students, how are they doing, how are they moving towards this goal that I have for them. So we're going to identify some of those formative assessments as well as some of those summative assessments. When it's all said and done with, what's going to show me what they have learned this semester. And so that's what those summative assessments are going to be. So we're going to work until 10:40 to identify, basically sort of fine-tune everything up, finalize our assessments, see if we're missing some anchor standards, see if we need to go back, and just kind of make this a little bit more robust. Before I turn you guys loose, can I get a volunteer who can kind of talk me through the process of everything we've done up to this point? Who is my first volunteer? I would like somebody to raise their hand to say, this is what we've learned so far today. These are the steps we've gone through. All right, Mr. Mike, Kurtz again.
All right, so far, we located our CBED. It's now 4257. Our new course title will be Healthcare Occupations.
Okay.
It covers Introduction to Healthcare and Medical Math. Pathway standards, we started with B 1.0, which is academics. Actually,
Pathway.
biotechnology,
No, here it is, recognizing.
we're in patient care pathway right now. So B 1.0 is recognize the integrated systems approach to healthcare delivery services, prevention, diagnosis, pathology, and treatment. And then we found the anchor standards on that. One is academics, because we teach everything, terminology, understanding, and with that, it's just academics for now. Our assignment will be group projects. Students will be assigned to discuss the different healthcare delivery system. What is a provider? What is an entity? What is a facility? Okay, and then on the assessment projects, which we have now, assessment and projects, would be presentation rubrics.
Fantastic. And I would like to give you one of these books for articulating it so nicely. Thank you for raising your hand. Can I get anybody else to synthesize by a show of hands, one person? Who would else like to kind of summarize what we've done so far? And I got another book. Who wants to volunteer?
Why don't you get a free book? Come on.
All right, Greg.
You were able to clarify and put us at ease about the process that we're going through step by step. Don't be in a big hurry, don't worry about the timer you're setting us. Take our time, do it right. So we come back, we'll learn how to do it correctly and efficiently.
So talk to me about those steps. What are the steps that we went through today?
I want to reiterate what the gentleman said there.
So please reiterate.
Start from the CBES, the CBAC, and you want to go to all the different components so we get to the wonderful outline that Robert did for this class here.
So the first thing you said was the CBES.
Pathway standards, anchor standards, assignments, assessments, and then the confluence.
All right, we have a winner. So we will now have until 10:40 to kind of start summing this up.